This video is sponsored by Incogni. Hello Internet, Seth Skorikowski, and today we're going to be talking about rules lawyers. These are RPG players who use the game's rules or ruling precedents to manipulate the game to their will, leaning on technicalities, vagaries, or poor writing to bully the rest of the table. The letter of the rules versus the spirit of the rules. They are disruptive and insufferable players. This is an old RPG game term, much older than other ones that are out there, like Murder Hobo, Lawful Stupid, Session Zero, Power Gamer, that are now accepted in the wider hobby vernacular, but like those terms, you instantly recognize what it means the very first time you hear it if you've had any experience with that type of player before. But one weird thing with the term rules lawyer is the definition of what that means has gotten a bit warped and confused over the years, probably thanks to rules lawyers, and one thing that constantly surprises me is how many people see them now as a good thing. I love having rule lawyers at my table. They help us keep track of the rules, which only tells me that those fortunate players out there have never actually dealt with a rules lawyer before. So first, let's look at two types of players who are not rules lawyers but often get confused for them. The first is the rules sage or rules librarian. These players are awesome. The rules sage is that player who knows the rules of the game. The game master and the other players can easily call on them for help, cutting down on a lot of the time being wasted digging through different books and slowing the game down. They take an interest in the game's rules and mechanics and love knowing as much as they can, or maybe they're just far more experienced in the game than the rest of the table is. But unlike what we call a rules lawyer, rules sages aren't trying to disrupt the game or manipulate it. And while yes, they might interject with a minor tip or clarification from time to time, they understand the core concept that is this is the game master's game and the GM can override or change rules however it is that they like. The fallen angel curls its fingers, and with a wet tearing sound, the sheriff's skin rips off and flies across into its open palm like a crumpled garment. Screaming through a lipless mouth, he stares at his exposed veins and muscles and collapses to the floor. What do? I'm going to draw my .45, dive behind that pillar, and put 3 slugs in that thing's head. Okay, roll me a violence. Hey, real fast, do we need to roll any stability loss for seeing that? Oh, thanks. Everybody, roll to keep it together. Rule sages aren't trying to disrupt the game or show off. They're trying to be helpful if they feel that a rule was accidentally missed, just an honest mistake. Notice that the phrasing was, do we need to follow this rule? Not, you failed to follow this rule. And a great rule sage also knows when a minor deviation from the rules isn't worth interrupting the game or questioning the game master's understanding to bring it up. Those players are the absolute best to have. When I've played in games that I'm very familiar with, and I've seen a minor rules correction that I could mention to the game master, but I also understand that it is the game master's game and my bringing it up wouldn't do anything more than just disrupt the game and give the game master a complex. So it's not worth mentioning it, so I don't mention it. At least I might not mention it during the session. I might bring it up a little bit later on if I feel it's important that the game master might want to know that for the future. Next is the rules stickler. But first, a word from our sponsor, Incogni. Right now, data brokers are collecting your information, gathering your name, address, date of birth, buying habits, social security number, political affiliation, family members, everything they can, and selling it to whoever they like. Marketing companies, hiring managers, identity thieves, scammers, burglars, anyone. Now, one of the big threats are people's search sites, which can easily be accessed by harassers who might not like how you drove that one day, or something that you said online and decide to come after you, or potential burglars that are scoping out a good home to rob. Now, there are laws that require that data brokers remove your information from their database if you request it. The bad news is that there are hundreds of these broker companies, making it impossible for any one person to contact them all, let alone follow up with them to make sure that they actually do it. Well, that's where Incogni comes in. You simply make an account, give them permission to act on your behalf, then sit back as they go after brokers with your information and make them remove it, then follow up with them to make sure that they do. And just to show you, this is my most recent report that they emailed me at the end of August. So far, they've sent requests off to 179 brokers, 146 of them have removed my information, and so far, 39 of them are never going to add my information again. And my number of robocalls has noticeably gone down the past few months since I started Incogni. So to help keep your data away from scammers, identity thieves, and stalkers, while also cutting down on all your spam and junk mail and robocalls, just hit the link below and use the code SETHSCORE to get 60% off an annual plan with Incogni and let them do that work for you. And now back to the rules stickler. These are players who hold the rules as absolute. They want to follow them and be sure that they're being followed correctly by everybody at the table. Now, they might allow for house rules, and if they do, are going to hold those in the same regard. These are the rules for the table and must be followed at all times. It doesn't matter if the rule is to their benefit or to their detriment. It is a rule and must be followed. Sticklers cannot stand inconsistency. They might interrupt the game to point out that a rule wasn't followed correctly or wasn't fully observed. And they can be really annoying at times, even problematic. But their intent isn't about getting away with something or exploiting loopholes. But they will use the rules to strategize and plan tactically within the set confines that those rules have, and that can give them a serious edge on players who don't bother mastering the game's rules. Rule sticklers might stop the game to discuss some completely meaningless detail, like clarifying that a spell's range is 120 feet, not 100 feet, when the bad guy was 80 feet away and it didn't matter because they were within range no matter what. Laying a stream of automatic fire, you hit the space pirate. What's my damage? Okay, so 5, and that makes it 15, and then 21. That's the magic number. He is dead. Mike, it's your turn. Yeah, hold on, I'm not done. It's 31 points of damage. Yeah, he is definitely extra dead. Mike? Oh, and it's armor piercing of 2, so don't forget that. The final damage didn't matter. The Game Master has already announced success and was trying to move on to keep the combat scene from dragging, but I have watched rule sticklers hold a game up for lengths of time to discuss some trivial or unimportant detail that makes no difference in that moment, interrupting someone to pedantically correct them on some irrelevant thing, sucking the momentum straight out of the game. They can be annoying, though sometimes they can be pretty helpful, but they're not antagonistic. Now, to be 100% clear here, because I know there's already a ton of comments that are accusing me otherwise, knowing the rules is not bad. I love it when players know the rules to the game that we're all playing together. Tactical thinking is not bad. I've talked about this in other videos before. I love tactical thinking players. Pointing out a mistake is not bad, though there are good and bad ways and times to go about doing that. And getting bad at inconsistency in the game is not bad. Now, those might be traits that rules lawyers, might exhibit, but so do rule sages and sticklers. So now that we've covered what rules lawyers aren't, let's discuss what they are and why they are awful. The defining thing with rules lawyers is the word lawyer, a word that historically has negative connotation. Shakespeare wrote in 1591, "Let's kill all the lawyers," referring to how lawyers maintain the privilege for the wealthy, shielding them behind bureaucracy and perversions of the rule of law. Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote in 1912 how Martians were a happy people entirely based off the fact that they lack lawyers on Mars. Lawyers get made fun of all the time in movies, and lawyer jokes are an entire genre of humor. So when gamers use the term rules lawyer, it's not about how you personally feel about lawyers and that one lawyer that you like, but it's a direct reference to this negative connotation that's long associated with lawyers as being dishonest, selfish, abusing loopholes and technicalities that ignore the spirit of the law, or in this case the game, solely for their personal benefit. For example, in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, Find Trap spell states that it works on things that cause an undesirable and unexpected effect. Now, rules lawyers argued that this could be interpreted as undesirable provisions in a legal contract, and the internet hearing this boosted this concept, and for a while, Find Traps included legalese versus physical or magical traps, which it was obviously referencing. Now, I understand that the 2024 update edition to this changed the wording of this spell to close this loophole because the spell was never intended to mean legal traps. And that right there is the problem. Rules lawyers see that something that could be interpreted one way can only mean that it must be interpreted that way. If you read enough games or editions of games, you'll notice certain phrasing that the authors have added specifically to combat rules lawyers, like, how sleeping wearing full heavy plate mail armor every night might have consequences and you might not get a full restful night's sleep. Now, most players have been fine accepting that concept without requiring that be written in the rules first, but rules lawyers claim that since nothing in the book said that you can't get a restful night's sleep in full plate mail, then you could always get a restful night's sleep in full plate mail. It's like those warning labels for obvious things. Now, there is a story of why all of these labels were necessary, and it's because they're the result of lawsuits. Rules lawyers might also win an argument with a game master, not because they're correct, but because they overwhelm the game master. This is like when Disney sent takedown notices to Etsy and Redbubble and various sellers who made merchandise with the names Loki or Thor, claiming trademark violations, even though the products were about the Norse gods and not about the Marvel characters who share those names. Now, of course, Disney didn't have the ability to actually trademark an ancient god, but small-time sellers out there who lacked the funds and the time to fight Disney's army of lawyers, they ended up complying and taking their stuff down because it wasn't worth the cost and the hassle and the risk of potentially losing their store. Just ask me why I no longer sell my 4 Thor shirts. This was the reason. Rules lawyers will do the same thing, preying on game masters, often less experienced game masters who might not know all the rules yet, or they just lack their own self-confidence in being a game master. The game master can either spend 15 minutes digging through rule books to refute the rules lawyer, or they can just concede that it's not worth all the hassle and the drama and just get back to the game and get everybody back to having fun. Now, this creates a precedent, and rules lawyers love precedent rulings that they can later exploit. Okay, I only got 2 hit points left, so dragging myself up to my feet, I'm going to clutch my axe, and want my wife's name to be the last thing that crosses my lips, I'm going to scream, "Margaret!" as I charge that monster. That is so epic. Dude, give yourself a bonus die for this attack. A mugger steps into the alley before you, your money or your life. I scream my wife's name, Sarah, and I attack him. I get a bonus die for that. No, why would you get a bonus die? You let Mike have a bonus die when he yelled out his wife's name. But that was the end of the adventure and this big dramatic moment as the character thought he was going to die. You didn't specify that. He got a bonus die, so I should get one too. It's not fair that you're playing favorites like this. In these cases, rules lawyers saying of what's fair and what's not fair, but the truth is they don't actually care about fairness or a game's rules, they only care about themselves. Hey, when I took that fireball damage 3 rounds ago, I forgot that I have fire resistance, so I should have half those hit points back. Dude, that was 3 rounds ago. We're not going to retcon the last 3 rounds. Just remember it going forward and let's keep going. I object. That is not fair. My character has fire resistance whether I remember it or not. Compared to if this argument had really been the other way around. Oh, when you guys hit the big bad guy with that fireball 3 rounds ago, I forgot that he had fire resistance, so he should have half those hit points back. No, that was 3 rounds ago. Our entire attack strategy since then has been based off the fact that he took full damage from that fireball. You can't just go giving him all those hit points back this late into the battle. Yeah, but he was supposed to have had fire resistance. No, you forgot that he had it, therefore he didn't have it. It's not fair if you're trying to retcon his hit points back. The simple truth is that rules lawyers only care about control and showing off, either showing off their knowledge of the rules or their cleverness in finding loopholes and exploits. They're bullies. They don't even have to possess a mastery of the rules, only a mastery of how to exploit them or how to confidently argue whatever they claim that the rules say. So, what do we do about them? Honestly, the first thing to do as a game master is knowing when to stand your ground. Show them that you cannot be bullied. Second, warn them that they're being problematic. Now, that might work. Maybe they'll grow out of it and learn to play the game as it's intended. For most rules lawyers, that ends up being the case. They end up growing out of it. But other rules lawyers don't. And if they don't stop with that behavior, just stop playing with them. There are tons of rules lawyers out there who are habitually between groups. They might be Reddit heroes dazzling other rules lawyers online and novice gamers with stories about how clever they are and how they win so hard at RPGs that no game master is good enough to handle them. But no one should have to endure these people at their table. So that's the rules lawyer video. As I have said, I've seen a ton of comments from people who are praising rules lawyers at the table for keeping the rules straight. But those aren't rules lawyers. Those are rule sages, and they are awesome to have. I can never stress that one enough. Hell, even a stickler can be helpful if you don't have a rule sage. And a lot of sticklers are really just rule sages in training. And I can only hope that those commenters out there never have to experience and suffer what an actual rules lawyer is like. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews or more RPG philosophy, just hit that subscribe button. And a huge thank you to Incogni for sponsoring this video. Make sure you hit them up down at the link below. Till next time, amigos, stay awesome. The easiest way of figuring out who the real rules lawyers are is just look down at the comments at who's giving lengthy rebuttals to all the silly example skits and completely missing the point of what those example skits are about. Works every time.